We're sitting with Ron Culp at the Arthur Page Society Conference in California, and it's Monday, September 17th in 2007. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
It's good to be here.
Great. Well, I want to start out talking with you a little bit about how you got into PR and selected that. You graduated from Indiana State University with a bachelor's degree in political science and journalism,
Correct.
In 1970. And you held a series of positions in journalism and local and state government. And then suddenly in 77, you were manager of corporate communications with Eli Lilly. How did all that transpire?
Oh, it is an interesting story. In fact, that I started out as a newspaper reporter, as you say, and then a friend who was in politics at the time in Indiana got me involved in a political campaign for a congressional candidate. And during that process, this candidate brought in a consultant from the East Coast who worked on the campaign. Long story short, we lost the primary. And as a result of that, the consultant said, you need to get out of Indiana for a while. And I have a couple of campaigns I'm working on in New York State. So why don't you come out to Albany? I looked at the atlas to find out where Albany was. And my wife and I said, what the heck? It sounds like an adventure. So we went out there to work for a year on political campaigns. This was in the 1972 period when Nixon was running for re-election and Republicans were very much in control. Matter of fact, as a result of that election, in New York State, the governorship under Nelson Rockefeller and both houses of the legislature were both Republican. Then what happened is in 1974, Watergate occurs and things change. And so we went from being the majority power, where I ran a large public relations organization by then within the New York State Assembly, to being in the minority, where we had to then say, excuse me, can we get some service over here? And so things changed a lot. Fortunately, during that time, we befriended a number of people in Albany, including lobbyists for Eli Lilly. And he said, I detect that you're probably not as excited about this whole scene as you used to be. When you're ready, you ought to come and talk to us about a job at Lilly. So I actually went there thinking that I was going to be working in government affairs in Washington and New York. And it turns out that when I showed up, the real need was in media relations. So I went into Lilly as department head of media relations.
Who had the most significant influence on your career? And how did that relationship affect your professionalism? How as you developed?
Well,
a mentor?
Yeah, well, I have many. I'm lucky to have many, and I'm a mentor to many. And I think that comes from the fact that I would be hard-pressed to pick one, but I can. Yeah. Well, I go back to people in my childhood who always encouraged me to do things, and things that they probably were amused about, but they saw that there was some creativity link or something there, so they were encouraging me to do crazy things. So the local newspaper editor, who when I was 11, 12 years old, said, why don't you write a guest column for the newspaper? And I wrote these crazy, thoughts. And then, and she said, you ought to just continue that. So that's why I decided I want to be a newspaper reporter when I went to college. And then in college, I had a couple of professors. Claude Billings was one of my professors. And Claude just kept saying, just kept pushing me where the opportunities might go within journalism for me. And then after I went to work at the first newspaper, John Rutherford was my news editor. I disliked that man with a passion. He was the meanest person on the news desk, but boy, did I not misspell words. This is before spell check, and you're coming in and you're basically saying, I have to look that word up in a dictionary, change the word. And so if you misspelled or anything, or if you had a fact that wasn't right, but I look back at John as being a huge influence. But on the PR side, it probably was a gentleman by the name of Jack Raymond. Jack was a former New York Times reporter that then went off to set up his own small boutique in New York. And John was an advisor to the CEO at Lilly. And Jack was a advisor to the CEO at Lilly. So Jack always talked to me when he came to town, and we'd go to dinner or lunch. And at one point, he comes in and says, I really have an idea for you. You're in Indianapolis, Indiana, a fairly small market. You have essentially the top PR job that you're going to get at Lilly. So you need to get into a broader network of PR to be discovered in this profession. So let's keep our ears open for opportunities in New York. And so that then led to my getting a job at Pitney Bowes as Director of Public Relations. And Jack and I stayed in touch for years and years. And as a matter of fact, I talked to him, I called him about 2 years ago, and I decided to go on this little tour of thanking all of my mentors that were still alive, and either in writing, or I would call them, or I would go have lunch. So I was going to New York, and I had lunch with him, and I thanked him. At the time, he was in his late 80s. And then last year, I mentioned him at the Page meeting in a speech that I gave about mentoring. And I sent him a copy of it. He called me, and we had a great conversation. And I'm glad we did that, because I just heard from his wife about 2 months ago that he died. And I feel better having said thank you when I did than wishing I had.
Well, we're going to just move here into the final section. You've been involved with educating or working in classrooms with some students.
Yep.
Just tell me a little bit about that. I mean, what students have you worked with? What universities
Sure.
and the things that you do there?
Well, I like going back to my alma mater, Indiana State, and talking with students there, because just like most of them today, I was first generation college, and so I think that's very important to wherever you can help encourage young people to excel, and the fact that this world is a pretty exciting place to go into, and don't settle for something smaller than what you deserve or want to seek. So I like going back and talking with those students, and quite involved. I've, along with my wife, given a grant to the school to create something called Real World 101, where young people are able to find out what it's like to really be entering the work world. Everything from social etiquette issues that they need to be aware of, to interview situations, to resume writing, et cetera. And because a lot of schools in budget cuts, had to stop doing those kind of things. When I was in school, there was a course that my wife and I loved that Mary Alice Banks taught, one of our favorite teachers, a 1-hour course called Social Orientation. So we knew which way to use the soup spoon, which everyone should know, and how to set a table, to how to act when you go to a funeral, a wedding, whatever, what a receiving line is like. So all those sorts of things, I think, are kind of a distant past in a lot of schools. So we're trying to bring that back into our alma mater. I've recently gone to Illinois State University, talked to a conference on ethics at Illinois State, did the same thing at Northern Illinois, DePaul University, Northwestern, and it's exciting for me, because you see young people who are trying to figure out exactly what they want to do career-wise. I was there as a junior and senior. I didn't know there was anything about public relations, never even heard of it. I thought, I was going to be a journalist. And so I think exposing young people to all kinds of ideas, and just encouraging them to do something that they're going to have passion about is fun. And then to see how they're going to react, and the kind of questions that they have, and they're very engaged. And then there's some who aren't.
Right.
And but it's society, so it works beautifully. But I get very energized, and I love being back in the classroom. Don't think I could do it full time. It's a tough job.
It is tough, yeah.
But I love going. I just was at Marquette University recently and spoke to a couple of classes up there. And my son went to Marquette, and I just felt that it was kind of a way to give back a little bit, and for the great education that he got, and revisit the campus that we used to see when we'd go see him.
Right. Did he go into the PR field? Or
Well, kind of unrelated. He's done the first part of my career. He's gone into politics.
Oh, okay.
So he's working in Washington, D.C. for a congressman.
Ah, wow. That's very good.
Then my other son is going into the other part of my career, and he's the editorial side working for a magazine here in California.
Ah,